Hello, ISMS students and families and anyone else who's watching this video. Miss Benin here to talk you through the process of printmaking at home. All right. Now, in a perfect world, if we would have been at school, we would have gotten these specifically made rubber stamps to design and carve our own stamps, and it would have been beautiful and wonderful. Very, very easy at school, but we're going to improvise and get a little experimental today with our printmaking at home. All right. So, two supplies that are going to be very, very handy for making a stamp for printmaking is either going to be a styrofoam plate. Might have these sitting around. If not, they're pretty cheap to pick up, or you might have a styrofoam cup or something else you could make work for this, or a potato. Yeah, potato. We're going real creative here. The pro of both of those things is they're very easy to cut into and to carve and to dent up. We don't want to like rip huge holes through either of them, but they're really easy to leave marks behind. All right. So I personally prefer the styrofoam because I think it's a little easier to manage. The potato, when you're cutting into it, it's like gooey. Well, it's wet and slimy, and you got to get those lines in there, and it's kind of like it works, but it's, we'd make do with what we got. All right. So if you have a styrofoam plate at home and you really don't like the edging of it, you can cut it off. You don't need it. So this part is gone. You don't need it anymore. The piece that you cut out, you can cut into any shape, really. I mean, you could make a triangle, a rectangle, kind of a unique geometric shape. I think it's a little more interesting just leaving a jaggedy snowball looking thing. So cut up a different shape if you want to, and dent your plate. It doesn't really matter which side, it's all styrofoam. I went around and just looked in my kitchen for things to use to dent the surface. I've used dull pencils before. I found this in my counter, a kebab stick for grilling. That was awesome. I'm like, sweet. Also just grabbed a fork, and you could use the top part, you could use the side part, use the back end, grabbed a spoon. Really, you can find anything that fits in your hand that will not snap will work. All right. So be careful with the wooden stick. That's more likely to break. So the one thing I'm really looking for in these stamps is thin and thick lines. And I'll tell you, the thicker lines will actually show up better at home. At school, to put the ink onto the surface or the paint onto the surface, we would use this tool right here. It's called a brayer. I am 99% sure most people don't have one of these at home. I like printmaking on the side, so I just happen to have one around. You could definitely find something similar, like a toilet paper roll or a newspaper roll, paper towel roll. You could use a soda can that's round. You could use a rolling pin, but I wouldn't recommend a wooden one or something that can absorb the paint because that's not good for eating. So don't reuse the rolling pin if you have one. You don't want to eat paint or ink or that kind of yucky stuff. With your potato or your styrofoam, start drawing some lines, shapes. You could do flowers. You could do people. You could really do anything. There is a catch, though, if you would like to do a name or numbers. Because you are going to be taking this thing and flipping it to stamp it, if you would write it normally, it will turn out completely backwards. So every letter and the spelling would be completely opposite. So if you would like to do your name or someone else's name, or maybe the street you live on, maybe want to do Waterloo, something cool, you'd have to do it spelled backwards, and the letters themselves would have to be flipped backwards. So for example, if my last name is Benin, Bennin, I would have to spell it Ninneb. And I would have all those letters also backwards. So it's kind of like, what's happening? It's a lot of like tricking your brain because you're so used to seeing letters the way they are. So if you're feeling like you're up for a challenge, that would be a fun thing to do. All right. So just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to do a flower. The more time you can spend on these, the better. They just look nicer, and that's pretty much the case with anything. If you're working on something, the more time you spend on it, the better it's going to be. Teachers, future employers, people can tell if you took your time on something or if you just rushed through. So I'm going to just do some swirly designs around my flower with my stick. Like I said, try something else too. Maybe you want to use the fork. I noticed the fork usually leaves really nice, like deeper lines because it's metal. The stick isn't as deep of lines, so it's just kind of a fun experimenting time. Printmaking we don't do very often, so we're not going to be perfect at it. It takes a lot of practice, and the creating the stamp I think is maybe the easiest part, but it's actually the printing part that's difficult because it depends on how much ink you have, it depends on how hard you're pressing down, a lot of variables that can make things difficult. And I did printmaking through college as my focus area, and I still have problems with it if I don't do it often enough. You get kind of rusty, right? But take practice, you get back into it, all right? Fill up your space. I'm trying to quickly come up with something, a lot of lines, all that good stuff. All right, so here's what I just came up with, a flower with a whole bunch of lines, if you can see that. To add the paint or add the ink or add the marker to this surface, if you have a marker, you just scribble really fast, pick it up, turn it over, press it down. Easy enough. That might be the fastest, less messy way to do this. I have paint that I'm hoping maybe you might have some of that too. Someone use that. Surprisingly, I don't have any markers at home. Weird. Color pencils and crayons, I'm good. I get some markers. But anyway, I just poured out a little paint. I just have some blue. Very exciting, I know. And if you're painting, it's going to be important that you just kind of keep your brush stroke the same direction. Try to make it look like all the same solid color. You don't want to have like big globs over here, not enough over here. So you want to go kind of, I go kind of quickly to try to move my hand really fast. Pick this up and see if I can do this vertically for you. And you can see as I'm doing this, the lines are staying white. That means I did press down hard enough. If you're like, oh, Miss Bannon, I filled in my lines. You can see as I'm doing this, some of mine are getting filled in too. It's okay. It's practice. We get better at it. And, paintbrush isn't the ideal method, but we make do. We're going to make it work. All right. So from here, once you have it all painted or covered over, like I said, just take it over and you push it onto your paper. Okay. It could be any kind of paper. I have a printer upstairs, so I have computer paper. You could use wrapping paper. You could use notebook paper. You could honestly print it on the back of a math worksheet. I'm not going to grade you based on the paper you used. I'm going to grade you if you made a stamp and you try to use different types of lines. That's the best part. And if you printed it, even better. If you're going through this process and you're like, Miss Bannon, I don't have paper to print onto, or I don't have paint, or I don't have this. I definitely want to work with you and make it work so we can get something turned in. So if you just made a stamp, you could take a picture of the stamp and send it in. If you're like, Miss Bannon, I don't even have stuff for making a stamp. I don't have a potato, and you're like, I'm out of luck. I don't have it. Well, good thing you naturally are stamped because you can use your hands. You could color your fingers or your hands and print your hands. Now, it's not as exciting as creating your own because you can't really change your hands much. I mean, maybe you could wrap some strings carefully without cutting off the circulation to your fingers, or maybe put some tape around it to mix it up a little bit, but you have 2 of these you could print. So if you're really out of everything, you got something, okay? So when I am pressing down on this stamp, keep it on the table, but I'm really not pressing hard. You've not heard me going like, bom, bom, bom. You haven't heard me like making a big fuss. I'm just sitting here and I'm kind of like a cat. I'm like gently kneading. I'm pressing all over, getting the edges, getting the middles. Ideally, we would use a press, which is, you almost could probably use a big frying pan and press the whole thing down so it's an even weight. I didn't really feel like getting the frying pan out, so I'm just using my hands, but it's up to you. And then when you are taking it off, you just kind of peel it away. And you can see Miss Bannon did not use enough. But you can see the flower there, and it kind of showed up. So Like I said, if you're like, it's not like the best thing I can make, do another one. Normally in class, I have you do 10, at least 10. Okay, so you can very easily do 10 at home if you want to. All right. If you have any questions for me, let me know. I know I was talking pretty fast and giving you a lot of information. I'm going to try printing my potato while I finish talking to you right away. But if you are struggling and you're like, Miss Bennon, I'm having problems here, or I'm hitting a roadblock, let me know. I'll help problem solve with you. It's not only getting creative with paints and markers and supplies. Sometimes you got to get creative with how to do things with this time that we're kind of stuck at home. So, again, email me. I almost always have my computer open, so I can check emails during school hours. I'll be around. I'm usually try to avoid it during the weekends because it's the weekend, right? So, but anyway, if you have questions, let me know. I want to see if this guy turned out. Kind of turned out my potato method. Before I started filming, I carved a word into this. I don't know if you can read that word. It kind of is supposed to say quarantine. So, gotta find a time to laugh during these times too. So, questions, let me know. And hopefully we're all doing all right. If it's nice out, go for a walk. Burn off some energy. It's currently snowing because I'm filming this on Thursday. It was 70 2 days ago. Where do we live? Oh yeah, Wisconsin. So, all right. Well, have a good day, and we'll send you a new video next week. All right. Have a good one. Bye.